What's up, guys? Wanted to start this one with a little bit of a trick. So we got the 4 aces. Put each one at a different spot in the deck. All right. Go ahead and we'll just push those somewhere into the middle of the deck, all right? Now, actually, I'll give the pack a couple mixes here, a little bit of a shuffle before I get too far into it. Perfect. So I'm going to demonstrate how I can deal, well, I'll try to deal those 4 aces from the center of the deck. So not on the bottom, not on the top either. But let's see how this goes here. Let me just take a quick peek. All right. And if this worked, we should have 4 aces. What's good, everybody? It's Reed and welcome back to another video. Today's going to be a little bit of a different video. I wanted to try a little bit of a new series on the channel. I'm going to call it How to Make Your Magic Better. And the idea of this series is more of a one-on-one kind of discussion type of series where I'm going to be trying to give you guys some tips on a lot of the more basics besides just sleight of hand. So we'll go into things like patter, performance style, your writing, how to utilize misdirection, audience management, all kinds of different things that are really, really important, but is often overlooked, especially on this YouTube platform. So this will be the first episode where we will go into patter, how to make your magic better through patter. This is something super important. Like, patter can make the simplest trick into something really, really good. It all comes down to how you prepare and how you script what you're gonna say. By the way, I hope you guys like that trick at the beginning of the video. If you like that kind of thing, let me know and I can continue to post more tricks at the intros of the videos. And they're fun to do. That was just a quick demonstration I came up with and just thought I'd throw in. But yeah, that's a lot of fun to do and I hope you guys enjoyed that. So the layout of these videos are gonna be pretty much me talking the whole time. If it's something more visual where I can give you examples that way, I'll try to demonstrate that. But for the most part, it's going to be a conversation. I'm going to go through different things you can do, why they're important, how they're important, and then I'll try to give you an example, maybe an example of how I use this, or a few examples of tricks that I do that use this. And finally, I'll finish off with giving you some resources, some different ways that you can work on this on your own and how you can improve besides the advice that I'm going to try to give in these videos. Now, don't worry, I still have a lot of tutorials to come. I just think this is something really important. Besides tutorials, you know, YouTube, a lot of the YouTube magicians are always so tutorial hungry, and I think you can get lost in just trying to learn a bunch of different tricks and a bunch of different moves and forget about some of the basics, some of the important things such as patter and what you say when you're performing, because it really makes a difference. Anyway, with all that said, let's jump right into it. So patter, if you're new to magic, you might not know what patter is. So patter is essentially the things you say while you're doing the trick. It's the things you say to keep your audience engaged. Obviously, you don't want to perform a trick in silence. Well, there are exceptions, you can have that as a style, but when you're performing for people, we need to have things to say. You know, a lot of beginner magicians make the mistake of always telegraphing what they're doing. So they'll say, all right, now I'll give the cards a shuffle. Now I'll give the cards a cut. You know, in some cases, there are reasons why you would want to say what you're doing. But most of the time, you don't want to just talk it by saying what you're doing, right? That gets boring. You want to make your patter interesting. So patter can come in the form of storytelling. It can come in all different kinds of forms. But the main idea is that it's what you're saying while you're performing. So the first thing that I think is important with patter is to always have a purpose when you're speaking. Kind of like I touched on a second ago. Like, you don't want to just be saying what you're doing, just always telegraphing what you're doing, because that's boring and it's a big mistake that a lot of beginner magicians definitely make. You know, sometimes there's a place for that, you know, when that patter is sort of a verbal misdirection as to what you're doing. So if you're saying, oh, I'm shuffling the deck while you're doing some kind of sleight, or if you say, oh, you know, I'm pushing your card into the middle while you control it to the bottom, you know, sometimes those are merited because it's sort of a verbal misdirection. But for the most part, You know, you don't need to say I'm shuffling the deck because the audience can see that. So it becomes redundant. It can, in some cases, raise suspicion, make people more suspicious. Well, why is he telling me he's shuffling when I can see him doing it? Most of all, it's boring. When creating tricks and figuring out what we want to say, we always need to assume that our audience is smart. And what I mean by that is, you know, don't assume that you're going to get away with everything. And in terms of patter, don't assume that you need to tell them everything you're doing. If people see you shuffling, you know, they know what's going on, right? You have to assume your audience is smart. And it can definitely isolate some viewers if you're being super obvious in explaining what you're doing. It can make them feel dumb and then they'll lose interest. So it's important when you're trying to decide what you're going to say, when you're going to say, make sure things are important and have purpose, right? So on one side of that coin, I've been saying, you know, you don't want to telegraph, you don't want to always just, you know, say what you're doing. But like I kind of mentioned, there is a time and a place for that, you know, if it covers moves and that sort of thing. When you're designing a trick and you're trying to determine what you're going to say, or if you're working on a trick practicing, you should be practicing what you're going to say as well. You know, when I'm running through a trick, I will be talking to myself, trying to get some lines down and some ideas of what I would say when I'm speaking. Sometimes, you know, lines are so important that I feel they add so much to the effect that, you know, when I'm writing down the sleights and the moves that I'm going to do for the trick, I'll also include say this or say that, because I think it's such a vital part of the trick. I need to say that at this moment every time I do the trick. And, you know, that can be sort of the verbal misdirection I was talking about, using patter to cover deception. I think one thing that I've kind of mentioned in previous videos that is important is if you're about to do, you know, a move or something important, you want to keep your eyes up and you want to engage the audience. And one way to do that is through patter. So sometimes when I'm pulling off, you know, more ballsy sleights and they're not as well covered, I'll have something that I like to ask the audience or say at that moment, and I pretty much always say it when I do that trick. So one example that comes to mind is I have this one switch. That switches a hidden card in Tenkai into for a card that's put into Gambler's Cop, right? And it's a move I use all the time. I mean, it's well covered, but I like to have a question to cover that moment, use patter to cover the deception. So what I always just say is, you know, so you chose the 7 of clubs. Is there any reason you chose that card? And just as I ask that, I'll do the switch as I, you know, reach for the deck. So I can say, you know, why didn't you choose any of these? And so it totally flows, but it uses that patter and that moment of me reaching for the deck as a perfect cue. So I think the pattern is super important there because it gives them something to think about. It will encourage them to look me in the eyes, look away from my hands. It will give me a reason to grab the deck, right? Instead of me just grabbing the deck, I said, why didn't you choose any of these cards as I grab the deck? So it gives me that purpose for the motion. So in that case, I'm using it as a verbal misdirection, and it's super important. But notice how I'm still not saying, let me grab the deck now. I'm saying, why didn't you choose any of these cards? And as I grab and kind of spread the deck. So the next thing with patter, on the topic of, talking with purpose, it's also important to talk with meaning. So this is more in the scripting of magic, right? Like I said in the intro, effects can be taken up a level, numerous levels. The effect that even a very simple method can have with the right presentation and pattern can make all the difference. So you want to make your tricks have meaning and purpose, and that's one of the ways that you can really take your effects to the next level. So here are a few ways you can go with your pattern to make your tricks more interesting, right? Obviously storytelling. Storytelling is a big one. You can create a story around the effect. This is a great strategy that a lot of magicians use, and I'll get into some different ways of coming up with a story around a trick a little bit later. Another thing is facts, interesting facts, something that most people probably wouldn't know. So, facts about decks of cards are something that can be interesting and obviously fit well with the card trick. One that I like to use is the fact about how many different ways there are to shuffle a deck, and that it's very likely that every time a deck of cards is shuffled, it's a new order that's never been done in the history of the world, right? That's a very neat fact for a lot of people. So I can use that when I let them shuffle to kind of evoke an emotion from them, feeling sort of special for that pack that they shuffled. I have a whole trick called endless combinations that is surrounded around that one fact that I'll talk about a little bit later as well on how I kind of use that. Another thing is jokes. You know, comedy magic is super huge, and it's great to make people laugh, and that's one way of really keeping people intrigued. So these are a few different ways you can incorporate patter, a few different forms of it with comedy, facts, and stories. You know, another thing that's more broad would be to try to evoke a specific emotion. You know, if you have a certain style, you know, that's more creepy, or try to evoke happiness, or maybe try to evoke a feeling of unknown, or a feeling of, even some people like to evoke a feeling of sadness, because it kind of pulls at people's heartstrings and gets that connection. But whatever, you know, you want to evoke through that trick, you can work your pattern around that to help evoke a specific emotion out of someone. So you need to, you know, have a goal emotion that you're trying to target, and then build the story around that. You know, you can try to make a trick deep. You can try to make people feel sympathy. You can try to make people happy, sad, whatever the case may be. You can evoke tons of different emotions through your pattern. And a final thing that can really help take your tricks to another level that ties in very well is establishing a connection. You know, establishing some sort of rapport between you and your spectator. And that can be as simple as, you know, asking them what their favorite card is if they have one, and asking them why. Asking them what they did before they got here. Asking them if they've ever seen a magic trick before. There are all these things that just build a little bit of a relationship between you and the spectator. And that's really important, because it draws them in and makes the trick that much better. And this is something through pattern that you can do really well. Telling a story around a trick, you know, or evoking an emotion brings people in, and that's what can establish a bit of a connection that makes them want to see the end, and makes them more blown away by the ending and the magic that happens in the meantime. Another idea on that topic of a connection, you know, some people, it's just not their thing to establish a connection with themselves, you know, and that might sound weird to a lot of people, but some people are maybe more introverted, or some people, their style isn't trying to make everything so real, so deep, so, you know, it all revolves around this, try to evoke sadness. So one thing you can do, if that's not your thing, to evoke that connection between you and the spectator, is try to evoke a connection between the spectator and another spectator. I have one trick that comes to mind that I really love to do this with, and the whole story is about them coming in, having a connection with them, and I build the whole trick around them too, and that'll bring them in just as much as a connection between you and the spectator, them and someone else, right? And the magic happens between those two people. So that's just another thought. One thing that, you know, I can't really stress this enough is make your pattern your own. Be unique. That's what's gonna separate you from anyone else. If you really want to become something, if you want to, even if you just want to perform good magic, you need to make it unique in some way. You know, there are some tricks that the pattern that is laid out is there for a reason, like I've said before. So you do need to incorporate that still, if it's that type of pattern, but you don't have to say word for word ever. You know, when I'm teaching tricks, I'm trying to not include as much pattern as I can and keep it more free, but there are still certain aspects of the pattern that I need to include because it helps with the method, and so they're equally as important. You know, you want to find pattern that fits your style. You know, you can take a trick that you learn and the presentation around it is sad, it's dark, it's whatever, and you can make that a happy, funny trick very easily by just changing the story. So when I learn a new trick, say, or if I purchase a trick and I see it and I learn it, there's obviously a method and there's an effect. So I look at the effect and I try to, you know, I scrap whatever pattern or whatever story they tell me that comes with it. I mean, in the odd occasion, it's just so good, so I keep it and I, you know, work it to fit my style a little better, the type of wording and word choice that I would use. But most of the time I'll scrap it and think of the effect at its base. You know, what is happening? Okay, they're picking a card and the card is transposing to another location. So what I'll do, and this is a really good tip, if you're trying to work on your storytelling abilities and how you create stories around your magic, this is a really good method that I kind of call, like real world analogies, or trying to compare your magic to real world analogies and then building off that. So back to that example, right? They pick a card and then it transposes over here. Well, I think in real life, what does that remind me of? Teleportation, maybe something supernatural, and something like totally a different style. You could even say like a vacation, like traveling, right? So those are three ideas just really quickly off the top of my head. And whatever one suits your style, you go down that lane. So for me, let's pick the ghost one, right? You could build the effect, so now we have to go, okay, what's the emotion I want to evoke? I have a story idea, right? Because I compared it to something in the real world people can relate to, right? A transposition, I can kind of compare that to supernatural or maybe ghost kind of thing, right? But again, there's so many different avenues, like even a vacation, like I said, right? So then you say, okay, what do I want to establish? I want to establish fear, maybe, or unknown or something like that. So then you'll say, okay, they pick their card, and maybe I can say that their card is a ghost or is possessed. Maybe I can bring in another item like a goblet or whatever, that kind of creepy looking, and put their card in it and say, the spirits will whatever, and then the transposition happens, and obviously you'd want to come up with a reason. Why is this happening? Who is this happening for? You can try to, like in school, answer the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why. And that's a great way to just, start to build your story, have answers to these questions, make them logical, make them make sense, make them intriguing, and you can totally build a whole story around an effect pretty easily with this method. So quickly run through, start with thinking about what the effect is at its base. What kind of things in the real world remind you of that? Pick one you like that fits your style. Work through the who, what, where, when, why, and try to make that story as interesting as you can, and fit the elements of the trick, and even fit the sleights, have it fit the different moves you're going to be doing. Try to give a logical reason that you can relate to in the real world to a specific kind of sleight, and so you can kind of cover that using your pattern, just saying you're doing something else. You know what I mean? A good strategy is to try to work your stories into multiple effects. So this is the idea of creating routines. Once you have a bunch of different tricks that you can do, start to pick ones that fit well together. Maybe they're a similar style, or they use similar moves, or the stories you've already created are similar. Start to perform them together, figure out which one's the strongest, sequence it from the last phase the strongest, so on. Work in a total story around all of these effects, and then that's how you can kind of create a cohesive, a strong routine that way. Routine building is a great way to work on your storytelling and to work on establishing a connection and your pattern points, because you really start to think about tricks as a whole and the story that they can tell when meshed together. I just want to reiterate how important it can be to think of the trick as the final effect. Think of it from the audience's perspective. Think about what they are witnessing, what's happening for them at its very, very base. Like the trick I did at the beginning of this video, what does the audience see? Well, they see 4 cards lost into the deck, they see a little bit of a shuffle, and then those cards are dealt from the center of the deck. Then once you have that, what the audience perceives, that's when you can start to relate it to real world analogies and start to come up with things like that. This is the strategy that I use 99% of the time when I'm creating stories and writing effects, because it's something it's probably not an original idea, but it's something that I started to do on my own, and then it came to me on my own, and it's been working really well. So I recommend you guys try this method. Another thing, don't be ashamed to Google stories. It's totally fine if you want to create a comedy routine, you want to create a scary routine, right? You're like, okay, I want to create a ghost story about this trick, but I don't know where to go with it. Google ghost stories, read a few of them. You'll find elements you like, you can piece them together. Maybe you'll find one story you really like, and you can, use the elements of that story in your trick. There's no shame in that. We're not authors at the end of the day, so it's okay to use some of these ideas from other sources in your creation. So let me jump into some examples of some tricks that the pattern is really important. So like I was saying, I have one trick called Endless Combinations that I will teach one day. It's a street trick, so it's performed in the hands, and the idea of the trick is the spectator selects a 4 of a kind, so the 4 aces, say. The aces are pushed into the deck, and the deck is immediately handed out for the spectator to shuffle. They shuffle the deck, return it to me, they hold their hand out, and I cleanly take the 4 cards off the top of the deck, put them in their hand, and they are the 4 aces. So alone, this trick is sleight of hand wise, I'll say it's pretty difficult. The effect is very strong, but the methods are very difficult. It's not one of those easy methods, super strong effect. But the effect honestly wouldn't be that great if I just put 4 cards into the middle, let them shuffle, and then gave them 4 cards off the top, and it was those 4 cards. But it's the story, more so the facts that I present during this trick. So here's somewhat how it goes. So I'll say, I need a 4 of a kind. They'll give me a 4 of a kind. And I'll say, I'll put those in 4 different spots in the deck, and I'll push them in. I'll say, so now you don't know where those cards are as I've pushed them in, but I also don't want myself to know where they are. So go ahead, go give them a shuffle. And as they're shuffling, I'll start to say, there's this interesting fact actually that because there's so many cards in a deck, right? 52 cards and 52 different positions. There's an extremely large number of different ways that a deck of cards can be shuffled. It's something like 8 times 10 to the 67, which is a number with like 67 or 68 zeros at the end of it. And maybe by this point they'll hand me back the deck, and I'll say, there's this saying that every time you shuffle a deck of cards, it's very likely that that order is an order that has never been seen before in the history of the world. That's just how many different combinations there are. That's how many endless combinations there are. It's really incredible. It might be possible that we have some kind of miracle on our hands with the way that you shuffled this deck today. There's so many combinations that maybe there's something special about this one, and this will be the only time in the entire world, in the entire history of the world, that this order will ever be genuinely shuffled into. And then I'll say, watch this. I'll deal off the top 4 cards, and it's those 4 cards. So you see how I took a simple trick and I built a story around it. It's really just that one fact that I built the story around. And it's a short trick, but it's hard hitting because it brings them in. It makes them feel special. It makes them feel like the deck that they shuffled is special in some way, and that this coincidence will probably never happen again, right? So it's a really strong trick because of that story. Another one that we all probably know very well is the 2-card Monty. And if you're new to Magic, maybe you don't know it, but just look it up. It's an easy trick. It's a pretty strong street trick. It's pretty classic. You'd all perform it once in a while. I don't like to do cliche effects too much, but it's fun to do. So let's say the basic presentation, right? You show a card, you put it in between their hands, you switch it a couple times, then you have their card, and then you put it back in between their fingers, and the 2 cards, if they were aces, say they changed to kings, right? That at its core is neat, right? They believe they're holding the aces, it changes to the king. It's a good effect, but I think why it's so strong is because the presentation of how it ropes people in, right? That trick is generally established as a bit of a game. So you're playing a game with the audience. It's a bit of a gambling game. You're showing them how people would scam them on the streets. And these are the real things that people can relate to, that people are intrigued in. Using your trick as a game, now that we're on the subject, is a super strong way to get people involved, because we at our core love games, love challenges. So if you can also build like a challenge or a game into your sort of routine, those are really fun as well. But with the 2-card Monty, because it's a game, because it's, they're trying to beat you and you're saying that you might scam them, that's what keeps them intrigued. So now, how to improve your patter. I've given you some tips here, but if you want to keep improving, what can you do? The one thing that's kind of funny is you can study English. You can look into stories from different genres, like look into books, things that are outside of Magic that'll help you with your storytelling inside of Magic, right? Like that's kind of what I was talking about with Googling stories. If you have a topic and you Google some stories, it'll give you all kinds of inspiration. So study those, see how stories are laid out from the beginning to the body and to the end, where the climax is. How those things kind of work can actually kind of help. Of course, you can look at other Magic tricks and other Magic presentations. That's a great way to get help, seeing how other magicians structure their tricks. You can get some cool ideas that way. Obviously, you can invest. There's several different books, lectures, different things like that you can buy on different Magic websites that kind of focus on this presentation pattern, how to make your Magic stronger, how to get your audience involved. And that's a great way. I can't think of any great ones off the top of my head right now because I'm drawing a blank, and I'm not the best person to ask which ones, but I know there are a lot of great ones out there, and I've definitely heard about a lot of ones that you can purchase if you have the money to do so. And the final thing is script writing. So what is script writing? Well, for me at least, when I create new tricks or when I learn a new trick that I want to use, I always script out the sleights. So what I have to do with my hands so that I can reference it, work on it, change it, remember it, all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure there are some of you guys out there who do similar sort of things, but I know a lot of people, especially beginner magicians, don't write what they should say. But script writing is a really helpful way to improve your script writing, your storytelling. So if you have an effect, start writing like, performer. Write, like, in quotes, exactly what you would say, and then you can have spectator and what they might hypothetically answer, and you can create this whole script and design a story of how the effect would go. This will help you remember how the story goes. This will help you see where it has weak links, see how to improve it, especially once you test it out. Even writing throwaway scripts that you don't even use are helpful because they help you build and help you learn. All right, guys, that is it for this video. I know it's a little bit different, but this is the kind of stuff that's really valuable. Like, sleights are great, but honestly, this is some of the things that are, invaluable at the end of the day. Like, advice like this, actually thinking about different aspects than all just sleight of hand. You don't have to be a pro, you don't have to even really be much for performing a magician. Even if you're just performing for your friends and family, like, these things are really important and they can really take your magic to the next level. So that's the idea behind this series. I want to go into some of those other topics mentioned in the intro. I got a lot of great stuff to talk about. So I hope the format of this works out pretty well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you do want more of these. There's still more that I'm going to release because I think it's important. But if you want me to actually prolong this series and make it a more regular thing, we can definitely keep doing that, because it's nice to have a more one-on-one sit-down conversation. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you practice some of these things, or if you're going to start, or how you go about creating your stories. So I hope this was useful. I hope you listened to some of the advice, maybe even, write down a few of the things that I said so you can remember to work on those. Thank you for watching. And with all that said, don't forget to like, please subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.